Hello to all Year 9 geographers. This is Mr. Joy, and that was Tina Turner with her appropriately titled tune, River Deep, Mountain High, a tune in which I guess she was keen to highlight that rivers begin in upland areas, not necessarily in dramatic and beautiful mountain ranges, at least not here in the United Kingdom, but in the case of the River Tees in the moorlands of Cumbria, which is still approximately 600 metres above sea level, so pretty high. Okay, so today's learning question for this loom lesson. What can I remember about the causes of flooding? Okay, please make sure you've got a pen or pencil to hand and some paper to work on. So today, what we're going to do in order to assist you with your developing knowledge of rivers and to help with the work set on class charts is consider the causes of flooding. First of all, just stop for a moment and consider in which part of the river flooding is most likely to occur. Whilst you do that, I will go to my pop-up drainage basin. Here's one I made earlier. This is what you will have done or be doing for your work as part of your work on class charts at the moment. So if I give you another 5 seconds. So the part of the river in which flooding is most likely to occur, as I hope you've worked out, is the lower course, this section around the mouth of the river here, where the river is both at its widest and deepest. So River Deep, Mountain High. Hey, it's a catchier title than River Wide, Deep and High, but I guess I know where Tina was coming from. And may I say that if any of you Year 9s don't know who Tina Turner is, I suggest you work on your musical education just as soon as you've completed this segment of your geography one. Okay, let's go back to the slides. So let's begin by summarising the contents of this loom lesson. So we're going to recap how to identify and explain factors affecting flood risk. Why are we going to do it? Well, we need to help deepen our knowledge of rivers. And how are we going to do it? Well, we're going to look at the physical and human factors in detail. What we're also going to do is take a look at this 6-mark question, which I'm going to ask you to do at the end. But I've included it here at the beginning in order that you can keep it in mind as you go through the work. The question is, river flooding is a natural phenomenon. To what extent do you consider this statement to be correct? It's a 6-marker. And what we need to do, first of all, is establish the physical reasons for river flooding. But in order to get a balanced set of views, we also need to bear in mind and consider the human activities and the impacts that they can have on this natural phenomenon. Okay, so on to the next slide. Let's set this up as a slideshow now. Whoops, pressing the wrong buttons. Right, so what are the physical and human causes? Right, what we're going to do first is I'm going to ask you to pause this in a moment. Now bear in mind that a loom lesson is just like a worksheet. You can pick it up and put it down. In this case, you can pause it, you can rewind it, you can go back over stuff that I have said or things that are in the slides at any point. What I'd like you to do in a moment is to pause it and take about 5 minutes and think about the physical causes and the human causes and their impact on flooding and why it happens. I would suggest making a mind map like I've done here. If you don't like mind maps, then perhaps you may choose to make notes, but please leave space to be able to add information later. Now, before you pause this, take a glance at the next 3 slides, which I've given you for a little bit of help. So first of all, we've got a picture here of a tractor ploughing a field. What's happening here and how do you think that may increase flood risk? Think back to the lessons you had in the autumn. Next, what's happening here? How may this also increase flood risk? And finally, what's happening in this picture and how may it increase flood risk? Now again, remember, you can go through these slides, pause them, look at them, But take your 5 minutes, pause the video, and I'll come back to you in a minute. Okay, now you've made your notes and you've thought back through to what you were taught in the autumn term. Let's go through the various different causes of flooding, beginning with precipitation. Now, rainfall. Torrential rainstorms can lead to sudden flash floods, as river channels cannot contain the sheer volume of water flowing into them. Also, steady rainfall over a number of days can also lead to flooding in lowland river basins. So that's precipitation. Geology, so rock type. Impermeable rocks, so rocks that don't allow water to pass through them, such as shales and clays, encourage water to flow overland and into river channels. That also speeds up water flow and makes flooding more likely. Now, if you think I'm going through these a bit quickly, don't worry, because in the next 2 slides, I've made some notes that you can then look at yours and actually check to make sure that you've got all the information that you require and make any alterations as you need to. Next, steep slopes. Can't say that properly. So in mountain environments, steep slopes encourage a rapid transfer of water towards river channels. This also increases the risk of flooding. Now, with the River Tees, we haven't got a mountainous environment, but at 600 metres above sea level, it's still fairly high and there are some steep-sided valleys, so we're still going to get the effect of steep slopes. So those 3 are the physical factors that we need to bear in mind as causes of flooding. Let's move on now and look at some human ones. So first of all, urbanisation. So building on floodplains that creates impermeable surfaces. For example, things like tarmac roads, concrete driveways, slate roofs. Water gets transferred quickly from them to drains and sewers and then into the urban river channels. This rapid movement of water makes flooding more likely. Next, deforestation. So much of the water that falls on trees is evaporated or stored temporarily on leaves and branches. Trees also use up water as they grow. Now, when trees are removed, much more water is suddenly available and transferred rapidly to river channels, increasing the flooding risk. Lastly, agriculture. In arable farming, soil is left unused and exposed to the elements for periods of time. It can lead to more what they call surface runoff. This is increased if the land is ploughed up and down the steep slopes, as in the picture that you saw, as opposed to ploughing across, because water can then flow quite quickly through the furrows. Okay. So those 3 are your human factors. So as you can see, and as promised, what I've done is I've listed those there. So there's your 3 physical factors and a picture actually from the River Tees. So you can see that you've got your rocks. You can see that even though it's not mountainous, we actually do have some fairly steep sides. And then I've also listed the 3 human factors there. So urbanisation, deforestation, and agriculture. The map that I've just included, you can see, shows the course of the River Tees from source to mouth. It highlights the height in metres above sea level, so 301 metres or more above sea level in the upper course. The middle course there with 61 metres to 300 metres above sea level, and then the lower course, so this will be the floodplains, where you've got towns, for example, such as Darlington, Yarm, and also much closer to the mouth of the river there, you've also got Middlesbrough. we'll actually move on to look at how river flooding in these areas are managed in a future Loom video lesson. Okay, so let's move on to look at the exam question. So, river flooding is a natural phenomenon. To what extent do you consider this statement to be correct? Now, first of all, let's go back to slide 3, shall we? And let's remind ourselves of what we had there. So we can establish the physical reasons for river flooding, but ask yourself the question, are these alone responsible? The question is asking, is it a natural phenomenon? So we've also looked at the human activities on river flooding. So do urbanization, deforestation and agriculture also have an impact? And if so, to what extent? Now, the term "to what extent," let's just move to one of my other slides here, is asking us to judge the importance or success of a strategy, scheme or project. So in this case, it's really asking us to more specifically evaluate the importance of physical versus human factors to decide whether it is purely a natural event. So in answering the question, you need to consider that. Also, don't forget the golden rules for successful question answering. So first of all, let's bug it. So box the command words, underline the geography, and glance at the marks available and link to the question throughout the response. In addition to that, let's have a P. So remember, start with a point. It's where you make a statement to introduce the answer. Move on to your evidence, where you introduce the key words for the answer that you need to give. And remember to explain. Remember to let loose and explain how the evidence backs up your answer. Okay, so moving back down. So, if at the end of all of this you're unsure about anything, please contact your class teacher. In other words, the teacher you have the most lessons with if you're in a shared group, or the person who teaches you for all of the time. The email addresses are here on the slide. Also, for those of you pushing for higher grades and looking to make the most of this time, I've included another website to look at which explains some more facts about the flooding events that actually have occurred on the River Tees. Above and beyond that, stay safe. Remember to social distance whenever you're outside of your home environment. And I know all of us here will be hoping that we see you very soon. Take care.